Hi, I'm Ada. I'm part of the monitoring team at West Country Rivers Trust. We monitor lots of different parameters from water quality to quantity, and also additional sort of health checks for the river. So we can look at sediment, we can look at the fish population, or the biodiversity on the bankside. I've got a few bits of kit with me here today. So we've first off got the black box. This is what we use to go out and monitor water quality. It's really good because we can go and we can take a grab sample and test it there and then and get results back. Alternatively, we can also measure water quality continuously. So we can put a device like this in the river, and it can take measurements every 15 minutes. So this bit will sit down into the river, taking the measurements, and then this bit will sit on the bankside to send those measurements to our online system. So it's really good at reporting back over a long term. We can see how well interventions are improving water quality or where there might be issues.
So this is a more in-depth look at the equipment within the black box. Here we have a HACK DR900, which we have programmed to measure colour, turbidity, suspended sediment and phosphate. And we also have a HACK Pocket Pro, which assesses temperature and conductivity. This is our standard setup, and similar to the citizen science program, it gives a basic health check for the river. But we can also add in other tools such as a YSI probe, which can collect more specific parameters, or we can take samples back for laboratory analysis. The parameters we choose to record are really important. For example, we look at turbidity and suspended sediment because although soil type will influence the visual clarity or turbidity of natural waters, there are some occasions where excess sediment and soil is washed into our rivers, and this is usually after a rainfall event. Soil is the most fundamental growing medium on land. However, when it washes into our rivers, it reduces the amount of sunlight available for aquatic plants to photosynthesize. It can also introduce toxic substances such as heavy metals and bacteria, and it can smother the riverbed, reducing dissolved oxygen available to fish eggs in the gravels. As you can see, the sample we have taken looks relatively clear, and turbidity and suspended sediment came out as a low value, which is good news for our rivers.
As well as deciding what you're going to measure, so water quality, flow, you also need to decide why you're going to measure it. Are you collecting baseline data? Are you looking pre and post putting in an intervention? For example, we've got projects looking at natural flood management where we're trying to capture flows during high rainfall events, slow the flow, and hopefully getting cleaner water coming down during those rain events. And so we might put a sonde in to measure the depth, but also the conductivity, which is just an indication of pollution. And then we can look at rainfall events before the intervention was put in and after to see have we improved the health of that river.
This is an example of data we have from a water quality sonde. This one is an Aquatrol 200 and was deployed under the Rapid Response Catchment Project. This is a project that aims to build community resilience to flooding by using natural flood management methods. As you can see, the parameters recorded are depth, which can indicate rainfall, conductivity, which can indicate pollution, and temperature, which you can see swings between day and night. From the depth graph as well as EA rainfall data, we can see that it rained around the 12th of June with an increase of water depth of around 30 centimetres. At the same time, conductivity dropped by around 2/3 from 140 to just below 50 microsiemens per centimetre, and then this restabilised at around 110. This happens because the excess water dilutes the dissolved ions in the water, and it also flushes out ions that have built up over time, especially with periods of no rainfall. Sometimes when it rains, we see spikes in conductivity, and that is likely due to contamination getting flushed into the river from the surrounding landscape. Other times, we also get spikes in conductivity when there is no rainfall. Both of these might indicate that more work is needed to help protect our rivers. Alongside our Aquatrol 200, we also set up a time-lapse camera. This helped us visualize the water level as well as view water quality, in particular the turbidity or clarity of the water. It can also help to track bankside erosion, sediment movement, and habitat change. In addition, we set up cameras on interventions within the catchments, which will provide evidence of how well these interventions are performing, but it will also track co-benefits of the scheme, such as biodiversity increase. In this example, a pond was installed to hold back and filter stormwater. This is now also providing a vital resource for a variety of wildlife.
We're seeing an increased amount of data collected about our rivers, which is really exciting, but we also need to see about how we'll collaborate and how the data is pulled together to get an overall picture of our river's health. We like to think of this as a three-tiered approach. So first of all, you've got the volunteers and the CSI programme, which collect a huge amount of data over a huge area. This is something that we just can't achieve on our scale. Next up, we've got Tier 2, which is WRT monitoring. So we might look at more parameters in potentially a more specific area. So it might still be water quality, or we might do something called a morph assessment to look at the river habitat and the physical habitat within it and on the banks. And then we've got Tier 3, which is often done by the EA or external companies, and it might involve lab analysis or higher spec equipment. They're all good for various different things. The CSI data is really good at finding an area where we want to focus, where the water quality might not be as good. And in contrast, the Tier 3, so the EA data, is good at holding people accountable for pollution incidents and things like that. I really enjoy the work that I do with West Country Rivers Trust because I feel like I can make change. The data that I collect goes on to inform the farm advisors to put in interventions that can clean up the river, reduce flooding, and just generally be positive for the environment around it. I think monitoring is really key to this because without monitoring, we don't have the scientific data to back up whether we're making that positive impact. And as an extra perk, I get to go out and be in lovely places like this.